Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Sherry Ann, author of How Are Ya, Aria. Sherry Ann, welcome to the show.
Thank you for talking with me, Paul.
Are you ready to get started?
I am.
All right. Question number 1. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
I would say to write. And I literally mean that because I was watching some interviews with you earlier and you talked about that very thing of how do I get started? And I think the first thing is literally to get started, to write, to begin to write your ideas down on paper. And that is the first step towards actually writing what then becomes an outline, what then becomes a book.
Exactly. Like Lao Tzu said, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first steps. Just get
That's
started.
Right.
Well, what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
The hardest part for me was that I did have all the ideas written down. I did have a lot of thoughts of what I wanted to say and what I wanted to do, but what do you then do? So after you have your manuscript or you have your outline, I didn't know about needing an editor. I didn't know about needing a graphic designer to lay out the format of the book. All these things would seem straightforward to people who do this, but if you've never done it before, then you don't know how to do it. So I think just having an outline or having some sort of step-by-step process to know where to go next once you have your manuscript and once you have your idea.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
Well, for me, and this is kind of unique to what I do, I'm an inspirational, motivational speaker. I was born partially deaf, so I do travel across the country speaking and helping people to overcome. And I'm also a singer. I mean, you wouldn't exactly think that a hearing impaired person would be a singer and a speaker, but I am. And so I have an opportunity to share with audiences. And so I think if you can take what you already do and bring this book into your audience, that has been really helpful for me. So in my case, I've been able to bring the book along with me to concerts, to school, to events that I'm the keynote speaker for. So I think that is really important to be able to find what it is that you do, who is your audience, and then presenting that book to your audience. And I think keeping in mind who your audience is when you're writing the book is very helpful as well, to make sure the audience is even there, or else why would you write the topic?
Absolutely. Well, speaking of books, I'd like to know what is your favorite book and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
You know, I am kind of interesting in that I don't have a favorite of just about anything. I just like and am just blessed, if you will, by so many things that I read and watch. But I will say that two of the books that have been really impactful to me, The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein, and that was a children's book. And so what is the first book that I wrote? It was a children's book inspired by my own niece and nephew. So The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein, and then there was a controversial book called The Shack by William Young. And the reason these books spoke to me has a little bit to do with who I am. It had something to do with my hearing impairment. Hearing impaired people tend to be very visual. We like to see pictures. We like to use our hands and our faces to create pictures, i.e. sign language. So for me, when I read The Giving Tree, and I saw this imagery of a tree that just kept giving and giving and giving, and it was never enough, I began to see the idea of metaphors. And also with the book The Shack, I also saw allegory. So you have this kind of a really roundabout picture of basically God, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And it was all played up in characters that are not of a holy or sacred nature to make you relate to the story of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. For instance, they used a woman, and they used just all different kinds of characters that are not what you would how you would define God, Father, and Holy Spirit, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. But what they did was they used imagery. And so early on, I adopted the idea of metaphor and allegory for conveying a message. I think it's powerful because sometimes just saying something directly might be too hard or too blunt. But I have learned through those books that you can use illustrations, you can use metaphors, you can use allegories to tell the story in an indirect way, but still have a very direct impact. And so those two books really taught me that.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
Well, once again, there's so many quotes that mean a lot to me, but one of the ones that stands out to me is by none other than Helen Keller. And she says this: I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will refuse to do the something that I can do.
That is an awesome quote.
Yeah, for sure. It's been her life has been very inspirational to my life. A person that was blind, deaf, and mute. And yet look at the books that she's written and look at the obstacles that she's overcome.
Absolutely. Well, Sherry Ann, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show today. What is the best way for people to find you online?
The best way to find me online is directly through my website, sherryanne.com, and that's spelled SherryAnne. And I also am on all the social media sites, the Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, as Sherry Ann as well.
Well, Sherry Ann, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.